And you don't have to find your way alone through the morass of good and terrible advice on how to be safer online. So my name is Scott-Railton. I'm a senior researcher at the Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto's Monk School. And for more than a dozen years, I've worked on different kinds of digital threats targeting civil society groups, but also, again and again, threats against journalists and journalism. Today, the most common form of targeting that we see when it's with spyware is against the telephone. Not a surprise. The phone is like this huge reservoir of personal information, and autocrats around the world want to take that and dump it out on the table. So how do you be safer from that? Well, first of all, starting at the level of your phone and its operating system. Both Apple and Google, which does the Android operating system, provide a new feature for securing your devices. The original idea flows from something that Apple has done since November 2021, and that is called lockdown mode. If you're an Apple user, take your iPhone out, you can do it while you're listening to this, go into your settings, go to privacy and security, and scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see the option for lockdown mode. Lockdown mode is an empirically driven mode that makes an iPhone a much more secure, much harder to hack device. And we have more years now of experience seeing it doing its job. The analogy would be like putting a second steel door on your apartment. It takes an extra few seconds to unlock it. You need a second key. If you've got a visitor, you've got to figure out how to get them the key, right? So there's some friction, but the peace of mind that it provides is dramatic. So if you're an Android user, you should know that Google offers something called Advanced Protect. It is a system where you turn it on, you enable it in the settings, and then it makes a lot of changes to your accounts and to the phone's structure for doing things like receiving messages that increases the difficulty to hack. If you're a journalist, you should seriously consider this mode. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a big improvement. But let's talk about how to use accounts and your apps more securely. Most journalists today use Signal, which is great. Signal is a high security app. Many also use WhatsApp. I'm going to walk you through the process of using both of those apps a little bit more safely. Neither of these is really about protecting you from spyware, but in both cases, this will increase your protection from surveillance. People have a lot of questions about privacy, Signal versus WhatsApp, what's better? I would say in general, as a journalist, you want to be in a place where you're maximizing privacy. And Signal, as a company, retains the least information about you of any of the messaging providers. But both do use end-to-end encryption, which means that no third party, other than you and whoever else is in a chat or a communication, can see what's being said there. However, a government can see who you're calling, because your phone is reaching out and touching another phone on the network, if you call the person with WhatsApp or if you call the person with Signal. But both of these apps provide a setting that makes it impossible for a government to see who you are calling using traditional methods. So in Signal, what you're going to do is go into your Signal settings, and you're going to see the option to always relay calls. Turn that option on. Once you've enabled that option, it means that, well, the phone network and whoever is the Starbucks Wi-Fi that you're on, can potentially see that you're making a Signal call. They can no longer see the IP address of the person you're calling. It may result in your call being a little bit staticky, sometimes on a lower connected network, but it is a massive improvement in your privacy and the privacy of everybody you call. Tell your friends. The second thing that I highly recommend that you do is use disappearing messages. And this is also about protecting you and your contacts from spyware. Why is that? Well, imagine if you're hacked on a Tuesday. If you've never deleted any of your old Signal messages, one of the first things that attacker is likely to do is grab your whole database of messages. Why wouldn't they, right? It's a huge past view into your work. But if you enable disappearing messages by default and set a timer, even if it's 90 days, even if it's a couple weeks, then all an attacker will have if they hack your phone will be what has happened in that last window and not further. It's a great little bit of digital housekeeping, and I recommend it to every journalist. If you go into Signal Advanced Privacy, find the option to set a default message timer. This is really important. Of course, some, for certain communications, will want to turn that disappearing messages setting on a message-by-message basis, on a contact-by-contact basis. May want to change that setting, which you can totally do. But if you turn on the setting by default, it means that when you have a new communication, you don't have to remember, oh, shoot, I should really turn on enable disappearing messages. Now, there's another option, which I highly recommend that everyone does, which is disabling link previews. Well, it's really useful on a Signal group to get a little preview of whatever the link is that somebody sent you. If I'm a government, say I'm a government spokesperson, and say you're a journalist asking me a question, I might say, okay, here's a link to the statement. So I send you that link. What you don't know is that that link is being fetched from a website, and that website knows the IP address of your phone. So I can use that to learn more about you. So in your Signal settings, we're going to go to the chats option. You can disable link previews. It means you're going to have to click on the thing to take a look at it, but that also forces you to examine the link and decide whether you like the look of it or you don't trust it. Now, let's move over to WhatsApp. The first thing I want you to do, crack open your WhatsApp. Go into your settings. Go to privacy, and now go to advanced. Turn on protect my IP address during calls. Now what changed? Well, now your IP address is relayed through a server. Your call is relayed through a server, which means that although WhatsApp still knows your IP address, they did before, now a government watching your network, maybe it's the cellular company, maybe it's the Wi-Fi provider, all they can see is that you're making a WhatsApp call. It would be technically very difficult for them to figure out who you're calling. Second option, and again, this is another classic thing. Let's go back to privacy and let's set a default timer for disappearing messages. Maybe you like to use your old messages as a repository of information. Maybe you're a journalist who uses that old message log as your second brain. Look, I get it. Everybody does that. Turn on a default message timer and make it generous. Make it long if you need that, or shorter if you're comfortable, but make sure that you have a default disappearing message timer set. Now, let's talk about account security. You've probably heard as a journalist by now that two-factor authentication is important, and it's true. What's two-factor authentication? Well, that means that when you want to log into your account, you need a second factor, a second key, which is something you have. Now, you're going to be familiar with this because your bank probably requires a code when you log in. Maybe they're going to text you a code. Maybe you've got a small object that shows a code. All of these things radically increase the security of your accounts. But listen, if you're an investigative journalist, you're going to have to go further. I'm going to be honest with you. You need to enroll in advanced protection programs. What is an advanced protection program? Well, Google started it off back in the day. What this program does is it lets Google know, hey, this user has extra security concerns. They've got extra privacy concerns. There's a greater chance that they're likely to be targeted with something, which means that when Google is doing its work to try to protect everybody's account, they're paying a lot more attention to your account. They're also more likely to register as suspicious, things that should be suspicious, but that they wouldn't necessarily technically block for everybody. This is how I like to think about it. We see this program blocking sophisticated attackers. It's a great way to punch above your weight and to really let a major security team know that you matter and that your account matters and that it deserves that extra security. Microsoft offers the same thing. It's called Account Guard. And Proton, which a lot of people also use, offers a similar feature called Proton Sentinel. Here's the link for that. Now, for each of these services, there's going to be a little trade-off in usability, right? It's a little bit like suddenly having, a doorwoman who's like carrying a knife under her shirt, right? Like she's ready to protect you, but like she's going to ask your guests a few extra questions. And at this point, as an investigative journalist, it's not just the reach goal. This should be your default. It's going to take a few minutes to set up, but trust me, you're going to feel good that you've done it. You're like, okay, I want to think about security, but I'm not sure where to turn. I Google this stuff, I get some advice. A bunch of it is contradictory. Maybe you've heard something about VPNs or antivirus, right? Is that what you should really be using first? Is that a protection? Well, I'm going to tell you it's probably not. But what you should do is check out Helplines. I'm going to tell you about two. Reporters Without Borders has a digital security team and a helpline for journalists that are facing high threats. Here it is on the screen. Check it out. You can reach out to them. they're in a good position to help you. Committee to Protect Journalists, another great resource. They also have the ability to help you in situations of risk. And finally, there's an NGO called Access Now, which offers a fully featured multilingual 24-hour staffed digital security helpline. Any of these groups can help you take the next step to be more secure or to address an urgent concern. It's important that you know that you're not alone, and you don't have to find your way alone through the morass of good and terrible advice on how to be safer online. But there's more. If you work in a newsroom though, please share these with your colleagues. But ultimately, we work together in groups. We are targeted together as groups, which means that it's very important if you and your colleagues are working on a project or a story that you all take the same steps to be more secure. Otherwise, it's like a house that has bars on 3 out of 4 of the windows, and then the 4th window is just open, right? So think about security as a group process. Be comfortable with the fact that there's more to learn. Be tolerant of the fact that you feel like there's probably more to do, and focus on working systematically with your colleagues. The helpline organizations that I just mentioned are all in a great position to help you think about how to be more secure as a group, not just as a bunch of individuals trying to muddle your way through.